like a cat, it was a present from my brother. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't see between the lines. I'll have another cup of coffee.
Yay.
And we're live. Look at us.
And we're live. Look at us.
Another day, another. How much did we make for doing this show?
Another cup of coffee.
Another cup of coffee. Duh. Wow, it was sitting right there. What's wrong with me?
You see, we should get in touch, with like community coffee. Maybe they'd sponsor us, Mikey.
That's actually not a bad idea.
I'd have to stop saying fuck that.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Come on, it's an adult show. They have adult things.
Yeah, but community coffee. They might not want to put up for me talking about mushroom trips and rock and roll adventures.
Yeah. No, I think the rock and roll adventures.
There might be a coffee company out there who would.
What about the French truck coffee people? In fact, I think I got a connection, remember?
You got a connection.
I think I might have a connection. French truck. Isn't it French truck coffee? I hope I'm saying it right, for the love of Jesus. That's the name of it, right? French truck coffee?
I have no idea. Why is my so weird today? All right. So I was watching that.
I'm sorry, but real quick before you get started, I'm just gonna, because Allison said, "Whoa, you guys, nobody's here yet because everybody expects you to be 5 to 10 minutes late every day, so people are gonna show up late." So we started on time and freaked some people out today, I guess. But now I'm looking, and we're starting to get some people starting to show up. But thank you, Alan.
I was watching that show that you and Luis like so much, the reboot of The Falcon and the Snowman.
And the Snowman, yeah. Right.
It's really good.
Right.
I like how they modernized all the themes, like the instead of owning a pet falcon, he is the falcon, and
right.
Instead of Sean Penn having a cocaine habit, his friend was a winter soldier. It's a different mix, but it was a fun episode last night because they were in one scene was in Bratislava.
And you've been there?
I've been to Bratislava. I think we talked about it on a previous show. Back then, it was still called Czechoslovakia. I think it's Slovenia now. I don't know where Bratislava is. I don't want to offend any Bratislavans.
Right.
But yeah, we opened up for Whitesnake in a soccer stadium.
That's amazing. Whitesnake
in 1993, and they sold the soccer stadium out, man. And the hit record in town was I went walking in Bratislava, and I went to the record store, and the biggest selling record at the store was Gino Vanelli's 1976 release, because communism had just ended and American music was available, and they liked Gino, man. He had a lot of hair on his chest and medals and that big old head of curly hair. Who wouldn't like Gino? And then we played the show. Didn't I tell a story last week about the getting lost along the Danube River?
Yes, yeah, you did tell a story about getting lost.
So I didn't tell this, though. It was one of the most psychotic nights of my life as far as insects go. Fred and I were sharing a room, which was never a good thing.
Probably not.
Well, he snored. He probably still does. I mean, you'd have to ask his wife, but he and Griff were both like incredible snorers, like the worst.
Yeah.
In the early days, we were so broke that we would get one hotel room, and 2 guys would sleep on the floor, and 2 guys would get a bed, and that would be it. And I remember sleeping between them in the floor, and they would be snoring so loud I couldn't sleep, and I'd get so frustrated I would sit up. And I would sit straight up, and I would punch like that across my body and hit each of them in the stomach. And I'd lay down real quick. And they'd both get up and go, what? And it would give me enough time to fall asleep before they started fucking hammering again at the saw and the snoring.
Right.
Terrible snores, both of them.
Nice.
So anyway, we're in Bratislava, and the hotel it's like everything's so sort of, post-communism. It's sort of rugged. There's no air conditioning. Probably looks like it was a nice hotel at one time, but it's a little threadbare. And it did look down at a beautiful old church, but it was hot. There was no air conditioning. It was summer. We were touring in summer. And it was just miserably hot. So we had the windows open. And Fred was reading, and the insects saw the light, and the room was just in a matter of seconds, filled with these insects all over the walls and everything. And I'm pissed and I'm hot and I'm trying to kill. I'm hitting the insects with my shirt. And finally, I'm jumping from bed to bed to hit the insects. And Fred's like, "You're out of your fucking mind. You have to get out of the room." So I actually went down to a little kiosk. It was this is by 9 or 10 at night. And I bought a Coke that wasn't cold, but it was Coke. And I went and sat on the steps of the cathedral I'd been looking at and just read some Jack Kerouac until I was tired enough to go to sleep and not care that I was sleeping in an insect-infested, formerly communist hotel.
I think they must have did something in the 70s, but they had the insect trucks that would go down the street and we'd follow them and stuff. I think he killed all the big ones. Yeah, but I mean, I would, I'd get wet with that stuff thinking it was cool. Following the fucking,
of course, there's Mosquito Man, there's Mosquito Man.
Yeah, let's follow the Mosquito Man. Oh, cool! It smells funny. Yeah, this is neat.
Yeah,
kind of. So
one of the jobs I had. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say. I went to the Bahamas. The same thing. They have these giant insects that just scare the fuck out of you. It's like what is that? And is it like Jurassic insects, basically?
Right.
But here, I don't think we have that many of those giant. We have the little ones that annoy the hell out of you, but you go other places and they have some big scary insects. I just wonder if that killed all the big ones. All the T-Rexes of the insect world. We kind of took them out early, I guess. Yeah, I know you're distracted.
I got all kinds of issues in my life.
I know. You and Silhouette, I kept thinking Most Wanted. We could do a screenshot and go, man, Mike May interviews Most Wanted Man in America.
The sun has kept shifting, and so it kept I'd suddenly get a cloud. Anyway, you're talking about chasing the Mosquito Man. When I was when I was dating Allison when I was 19. When I was dating my wife when I was a kid, I got a job. Because I wasn't making any money playing music at 19. And I got a job at a pest control place. And so it was pest control guys have my mad respect because it was one of the most disgusting jobs I ever had. Because, you got to dig around the foundation of houses to spray for termites.
Right.
So I didn't mind I got to do a jackhammer at Joe's bicycle shop on Tulane, jackhammering holes in the ground with chemicals. That was all right. But one time, the New Orleans houses are a little bit, above. And so you had to crawl on your elbows under the house to get to where the place was. So I'm crawling one time and I'm like, "Hey man, you ever worry about being down here with bugs or stuff like that?" And the guy that's training me, is this guy. And he goes, "Oh yeah. I remember one time I was down on a house just like this one. And I got close to the front wall like we're getting now, and the wall looked like it was the tar was dripping or something. And so I went to touch it to see if it was liquid, and I just got swarmed with roaches, man. They were all up in my shirt and my pants and in my face and up in my hat. And I was just like, oh my God. And you're still working the job, this guy was. So, but the thing that chased me out of the gig was that we were in Destrehan spraying pecan trees for caterpillars, the big giant caterpillar nests in the pecan trees. So you got the thing, the big hose thing and the nozzle and the handle, and you're spraying 30 feet in the air. It's a beautiful day, just like today. And I'm watching the spray and the wind's drifting. Some of it's coming back down towards me. And I turn to the guy who's training me and I go, "Hey man, you ever worry about the chemicals getting on your skin?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I've been doing this 20 years. I got liver problems. I got kidney problems. It soaked right in." I fucking quit, man. Let's go back to the office now.
Just so nonchalant. Oh, yeah. Got liver. It's like one of the end of those. It's no biggie. You can live with liver. You can liver cancer or whatever else. My eyes glow at night. It's weird.
Every job has, levels of things that might happen. I have hard hearing, because of rock and roll. I don't have any high end, and it sometimes can't hear people even talking in the next room. That's not chemicals on my skin. I'll take the hard of hearing over spraying myself with chemicals for 20 years.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a fun one.
All right. So listen, today we're not going to talk so long, just you and me. We already talked longer than we said we were, because our guest has had such a varied and interesting career. He's an old friend of mine, Ivan Bodley. Uh, he went to Tulane. That's how I met him. He was a DJ on WTUL, and there he is. And a lot of musicians in town, like Mikey, knew him from the same way because this young kid had a voracious appetite for music. And he liked my songs early on, and he was very nice to me about playing my solo stuff when I had quit the backbeats before I was in cowboy cloth. And so we got to be friendly. And I called him one day and I said, "Hey, Ivan, my brother has this sort of made up band called the Not Goods. They're a punk band, but they're not really a band. They're just sort of a joke thing. They have this 4-song EP that they call an album, and it's called Absolutely Not Good or whatever. And can they come play a song on your show?" And Ivan was young and he was game for anything. And he goes, "Yeah, man, you bring them down. I'll play a song." So we walk into the booth at WTUL, and these guys are knuckleheads. One's a psychiatrist now. My brother's a designer on Queen Sugar, the television show. I mean, they're all successful men, and they're just idiots. And we walk into the booth, and I say to Ivan, "So how many songs can you play?" And he goes, "I don't play one or two for you." And I open a briefcase that's filled with Schaefer beer. And I say, "How many now?" And he goes, "Come on, let's just do the thing." And then, as he likes to tell the story, the Not Goods took up like 40 minutes of his show and drank all the beer as they played their music and babbled about how great they were. He was a good sport. And then he graduated and went to Berkeley School of Music. And first job out of college wasn't actually playing music. It was as a publicist, where he got to meet cats like Stanley Clarke and these amazing people. And he spent now years, a couple of decades, in the pit orchestras of Broadway, and touring with some of the legends of rock and roll. I'll let him tell you more about it. He's got a book out called Am I Famous Yet? He's got a blog on YouTube, just like us, called Am I Famous Yet?, where he tells the stories from his book. His music is on YouTube. He is one of the most accomplished musicians I ever met, one of the most humble guys I ever played with, and never was a member of the Not Goods. He was a session player once on one record. And welcome to the show, buddy. Welcome to the
Wait a minute. Hold on. I was with you.
Oh, if you think it's ugly between Sting and Stuart Copeland, just wait.
For those who have seen the Not Goods movie, they know that I actually own the Not Goods trademark, and that my attorneys have issued cease and desist letters to all of y'all.
And my attorneys have gotten back to your attorneys and let them know that you, in fact, were never a member. You did one session in New York, and you got some high-priced New York attorney to claim membership and got the copyrights somehow. I don't know what's going on. We're not even going to talk about it on this. I'd rather talk about how much Stuart Copeland and Sting hate each other than how much they're not.
How did we even get there? Remember, we were talking about fights with bands, right? When we were doing our little test earlier.
Yeah, we do. For those of you listening in on this, we do a pre-show test, and some of the stories were really interesting. I don't know how many of them can make it to the show, but
yeah, we already did the interview, guys. You missed it. We're just going to hang out and drink.
Yeah, it was awesome. Y'all should have been here. Really. So of all the Broadway, what was your favorite Broadway show you ever did?
Oh man, so many. Well, I spent 5.5 years subbing on Rock of Ages, which is the '80s hair metal musical. So the band was on stage, costume, in makeup. We got choreography. We had
that had to be fun.
We had to scream out "asshole" at the lead singer at one point, stuff like that. And that show ran 5.5 years, and I ended up doing close to 300 performances of it over the course of the run. Then probably my next favorite one was Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Same thing. The band was on stage in costume and makeup, memorized the whole thing. It's a pressure, but it was like performing, like a rock concert every night.
We've had another guest on the show who was also in Hedwig, not that version. He's not as accomplished as you. Just an actor, Michael Cerveris. He's won a couple of Tonys. You might have You might have even played in a play that he was in.
I did Fun Home with Michael Cerveris, and he is a unbelievably talented gentleman, and I'm a big fan of his, and just a sweet guy.
Yeah. Didn't you sub? You didn't never did sub on Evita?
I never did, never did.
So Fun Home was the only time. Yeah, he's one of the most generous guys and an incredible actor, incredible singer. Just can't say enough about the guy's talent.
All around, no, there's nothing he can't do. He's a great guy, and he's just unbelievably talented.
But I mean, that's your life, though. As far as Broadway, that's the kind of talent that you're working with for the last couple decades, right?
One would hope.
And the musicians must be like, I mean, stupid great. I mean, are y'all sight reading? How's that work?
It depends on the show. Like the two that I just mentioned, Hedwig and Rock of Ages, you had to memorize the score completely because you're on stage, so you couldn't read those. But all the others, I've done a dozen. I've subbed. I've never had a Broadway chair. I've had some off-Broadway chairs, but so I've subbed on about 12 different shows, and most of them you have sheet music in front of you, and they've given it to you, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks in advance. You have time to prepare it, so you're basically memorizing, even though you have the book in front of you, kind of thing. The thing that's different about pit gigs, and again, this is only probably about 25% of my life. Most of the thing I'm doing is live stuff, touring, weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs. That's how we pay the bills most of the time. But the thing that's different about the theater thing is they really want it to be exact night after night. Like, and when you're subbing for somebody, they want you to sound exactly like the person you're subbing for. Like, you don't bring your personality to it at all. You don't bring your licks, your style, your improv, none of that. You're trying to do exactly like the person that you're subbing for, so that the best compliment you can get on a Broadway sub is you see one of the actors in the hallway and they go, "Oh, you're here tonight? I didn't even know you were on."
Right.
That's funny.
Right.
That's
what you're hoping to not be noticed,
To not be noticed, yeah.
It does, and they don't appreciate mistakes, and I understand it because they got upstairs, they got choreography going on, they've got vocal stuff going on, they have acting, these triple threat people like Michael Cerveris don't need to have their ear pulled like, what's the bass player doing? They don't want that.
Right, gotcha.
They have enough on their plate, kind of thing. So you kind of want to steer the ship the way it's supposed to be steered. And the other funny thing about it, to me, there's a real culture around theater, which is like, the people that have sort of like circulated into that livelihood, see it sort of as an elite club. Now, I don't know how elite it is. I mean, you got to be very skilled musician to do that, but it's a specific skill set you have to have. And that skill set involves sort of, again, like playing the exact same thing night after night. That's a different thing. And also not making mistakes. Like, they don't appreciate mistakes. They don't like it. So, but the thing that happens is, like, if you're a chair holder and you make a mistake, you kind of go, oh, the rest of the band will kind of turn around and look at you and laugh, like, it's funny, right?
Ooh, ouch.
But if you're a sub and you make the exact same mistake, they look at you and go like, I don't know if this guy's going to work out.
Oh, wow.
No trust.
There's that kind of thing. Okay. Like, you got to be almost better than the guy you're subbing for, or more consistent, I should say.
And I have a question.
Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, Mikey.
I was just I was just going to comment on that. Just the fact that it works that way in just about anything, right? I mean, once you earn somebody's trust, something goes wrong, they trust you when you say, "Oh, well, that was because of whatever or whatever." You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it happens.
It's a trust, but even more than that, it's almost like being in a frat. Like you kind of get hazed into it because it's hard to get in. But once you're in, you're kind of in the club. So then they're looking at the new pledges, like, I don't know, walk out. And then the other thing is too, like because of the union rules, it's very difficult. Once you've been hired officially, it's very difficult to get fired off of a show. Not impossible, but very difficult. But as a sub, easy to get fired. Really.
They just lose your number. You just move down further in the list, and they call you very last when they can't find anybody else.
I've moved down that list many times.
I'm about to ask you a question I've asked Michael Cerveris, I've asked Mark Bryan from Hootie and the Blowfish. I've asked Craig Klein. It starts with a quote from John Lennon where he said, one had to completely humiliate oneself to be a Beatle.
Yeah.
That's what people don't know. And so for me, my moment of one has to completely humiliate oneself to be, in my case, in Cowboy Mouth, was a show we did for a horrible DJ in Chicago named Mancow, who hates women and hates
everybody.
Okay. He hates everybody, but he loved Fred.
Everybody.
So he had us on a show every time we were in Chicago so that he could have us on and he could tell people how much he hated everybody. And then he would say he loved Fred and play our music. And so he was going to do a promotional for us. We show up at 5 a.m. in Joliet, Illinois at a strip mall to play in a club. We get inside and the setup is we're playing Jenny Says live on the radio while 6 strippers dance in front of us, and his sidekick, who is a very overweight guy named Turd, in this case, who is naked and painted blue, is standing in the middle of the strippers screaming at the crowd to give us more energy. And I'm looking at this fat guy's blue ass, and I'm watching the strippers dance as I play the guitar riff, and I'm thinking, one has to completely humiliate oneself to be in this business. So I'm wondering, no one else, by the way, has had a story along those lines. Everybody else was like, no, nothing like that ever happened to me, man. I had a pretty good career.
First off, I see that as a net positive. You're looking at a naked, overweight gentleman painted blue for the morning. That's a good day. You're going to have a good day.
It's a good luck charm.
I've said this many times, especially when I've become like the band leader or music director or conductor of an act. You at that point you become middle management. So you're catching hell from above and below. So a lot of that skill set is learning how to eat enormous amounts of crap. That's kind of like your job. So, I mean, I can't even give you one story except for possibly, having to accompany an 8-year-old Elvis impersonator on Staten Island public cable TV.
Wow.
It's like my whole story is sort of rife with like, how much shit do you need to eat on this particular gig? It never ends. I mean, last weekend I did a very ritzy private party, a wedding. It was in North Carolina. The first time I've done a wedding gig in 4 months or something. And these kind of things, like you have to go and, you have to sort of like kowtow and acquiesce to the party planner and the vendors and the club owner, the country club. Like there's all these rules and you can't do this and you can't come in that door and you can't park here and you gotta, it's just kind of, all right, eyes and teeth.
Right? Oh yeah. Well, Cowboy Mouth did a lot of those kind of corporate shows. I was just wondering if there was a specific moment on stage where you just went, how did I get here?
Yeah, those are kind of daily, those are kind of that happen all the
time. So, all right, you have a podcast. It's named that same as your book, right? Am I famous yet?
Yeah, it's a serialization of my new book.
So this is like volume 1, right? Because the thing is ongoing. So this is sort of, I guess, a volume 1 almost, if you will.
Yeah, I started this project probably about 4 years ago. But then when we all got sort of heavily unemployed from the quarantine situation, I was able to kind of complete it. And one idea I had was to serialize the chapters. I basically just sort of read them as a spoken word kind of thing, as a YouTube series. So I think it's 43 volumes are done, in the first series, and then I went ahead and put it into a book. It's self-published through Amazon, available through Amazon in a Kindle and paperback editions, and through my website, funkboy.net. If you need your autographed copy, that's I prefer that, of course.
Sounds like it's ready for Audible too, right? You got it all worked out on YouTube or whatever, right? You got the files.
Yeah, I mean. And also I took the audio and put that up as a podcast, an audio-only podcast on Anchor FM. So there's all these different, however you choose to consume media, I've probably got a format sort of geared just for you. And again, it was initially to be a book, and then it became sort of this multimedia thing, you know, because the books only just came out in the last, you know, couple of weeks. I finally have hard copies of the book. You know.
Nice.
So are you going to just kind of continue to update it as more stories come along for YouTube, or, you know?
Well, you're right. I mean, it just sort of feels like volume 1 is kind of a complete thing. So I think that it's time to start working on volume 2. And I already have some notes, you know, like remember the time, you know, sort of like when I was running on the top level of a parking deck outside of, I think it was O'Hare Airport. Like we were staying at the airport, and the only place to run was sort of like the top level of the parking lot. And every time I would come by elevator bank C, there was a couple in there sort of having sex in the hallway, and I just kind of run by and go, what's going on? You know, every 5 lap or something, like, they're still at it. Okay, yeah, there they are, you know.
Yeah, they're doing all right there. They got it worked out.
They fine. They found a spot that was semi-private, good enough.
Well, yeah, you had your workout. You had your workout. They had their workout.
Right.
This is what, you know, you got to any port in a storm, my friend, you know.
So what's one of the stories off of
Yeah, I was going to say you play with like Sam and Dave and Sting and Elvis Costello and just so many great, you know, greats of rock and roll. Of all of them, for me, like when you were playing with Sam and Dave, every time I'd see one of those posts, I'd be like, he's standing on stage with the legends, you know. That's I mean, Sting's awesome. Don't get me wrong. He's an incredibly talented guy, and I love his stuff. But you know, he's like my age. Sam and Dave are guys I grew up with, and you go, well, you know, those guys, where did they come from? You know, when you're a kid, it's all so big, you know. Were they nice?
What's interesting about that was, well, to be clear, I was Sam's music director for 13 years on the road. I've known him about 20 years. Dave Prater passed in '88, so I never, unfortunately, got to play with him. But I was Sam's music director for starting in 2003 until he's officially semi-retired because he's 86 years old now. The last we did with him was his 80th birthday celebration in Tokyo at the Blue Note in Japan. So a lot of these others, and you know, he's a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. So a lot of these other names that you just mentioned, I met all these people standing next to Sam. So it's more with special guests: Sting, Elvis Costello, Winona Judd, Travis Tritt, Paul Rogers. I met Bono. I met The Edge. I met Robert Plant. You know, like just Brett Springsteen standing next to Sam.
We're all fans of Sam.
They're fans. Yes, fanatic is the word, because he came before all of them, and his voice is a true first tenor voice. He's got this crazy genetic thing that he does. He doesn't practice. He doesn't warm up. He just walks out on stage. He opens his mouth, and it's there, and it's like, you know, hair on the back of your neck standing up, kind of good. And I'll tell you this, you know, as you know, most singers, as they age, because I work with a lot of people who, you know, started their careers in the 50s and 60s. So as they get into their 60s and 70s, they tend to want to lower the keys for things a little bit. Like, can we pull that down a half step, pull it down a whole step, you know, just so, you know, so they can survive the night. Sam has 4 songs in his set that are in higher keys than he recorded them in the 1960s.
Oh,
wow.
So, like, you know,
Robin Sanders like that.
Yeah, Soul Man was originally a G. It's now an A flat. Like, it's up a step higher than he recorded in 1965. Like, who does that? Who does that?
Right.
Hold On, I'm Coming was originally an A flat. Is now in C. It's a third higher.
Whoa.
Wow.
Third higher. You know, like Dave was holding him down all those years. So, like, you know. Springsteen used to sneak into the back of the club. Anytime Sam and Dave were anywhere near New Jersey, Springsteen would sneak into the back of the club and just hang out and watch them. You know, because like he's one of those voices, you know, that changed the course of rock and roll. You know, ZZ Top covered "I Thank You." Elvis Costello covered "I Can't Stand Up for Falling Down." You know, the Blues Brothers revived Soul Man for a whole new generation, kind of thing. So. He's really a remarkable human being. He's like my second dad. I call him on Father's Day and birthday every year, you know, because he's like he was the same age as my dad was too. So he's the same age as my dad. And Shirley Alston Reeves, original lead singer for the world famous Shirelles, that's her entire legal billing. I'll explain that later. She's the same age as my mom was. So these are like my surrogate road parents, you know. And I've been traveling with her for.
Nice.
Great stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So, what's one of your stories from the book that people always go, I love that story? Something that get people to come and go, let me come check and see what some of this stuff's about here. You know, is there one that people just love?
Right. Well, you know, I wrote when I was writing the book, my friend Jeffrey DeMoy, who was at Tulane Med School when I was at Tulane undergrad, you know, he's a writer. He writes mystery novels in his spare time now. He's a retired radiologist. But, you know, I was writing all these stories that were all the stuff that really screwed up, you know, things that went horribly wrong over and over and over again. And he said, why don't you write a chapter where things go right, just to show like what it's like when things actually work out, you know? And I was like, oh, that's an idea. So like the second chapter of the book, you know, is all detailing the fact when we played with Sam at the Tokyo Jazz Festival in 2009. There's like 5,000 of our closest friends in attendance. The band we had was big. It was like 4 horns, 4 singers, 5 rhythm, you know, and it was a big stage, big band, big show. And we are banging, you know, I Thank You and Soul Man, like these classic soul tunes, you know. And the thing was also live on national television. You know, there's YouTube clips of it that exist, you know, and it was just like this transcendent moment. Like, you know, the Japanese are very reserved people. They're not emotive. They don't, you know, they're just like, they bow quietly and the whole thing. And there are people in the front row crying, like ugly crying, listening to Sam sing When Something Is Wrong With My Baby. They're losing it. You know, they're screaming, yelling. It was very uncharacteristic. You just knew that with the sound of his voice, he was elevating, like levitating this entire room full of people.
Nice.
It was just one of those moments. And again, fortunately, it's been captured on video. So like I have proof. I was there. I saw it, you know, I saw it happen. And we had this moment, like indescribably good. And then immediately after us, Sly and the Family Stone played.
Oh, nice.
Wow. I don't know what stories about Sly these days, but he's not in the best shape. So it was 4 of the original Family Stone were there. Cynthia and Jerry were there. Before Cynthia passed, she was there. Sly and Sister Rose were there. So the band goes out without Sly, and they start doing, you know, all the big bangers, like "Let Me Take You Higher," "I Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself." You know, it's like pounding, pounding, pounding. Whenever Sly is ready, and I don't know what sort of, I detail this in the book too. Like I don't know what his recreational chemical usage is, but I've heard things, and apparently it's constant and it's daily and it's not good. So he's kind of all hunched over and kind of bent over like this, like he can't even kind of stand up anymore. So he kind of shuffles out on stage, and he sits down at the piano. And apparently, this was the first time Sly and the Family Stone had ever been to the country of Japan. So I'm going to ask you guys, what song do you think he chose to play as his first number for the very first time he ever appeared in Japan? Any guesses?
Ordinary People? I don't, you know.
That would have been a good one. Everyday People? No.
Everyday People, sorry, right?
Don't Call Me Whitey.
No.
That's the first song he played. We were in the wings watching, like with our mouths open, like, really? That's right. And when he was at the piano, he was doing all the sort of down tempo kind of stuff. So he's doing, you know, If You Want Me to Stay and Family Affair. It was beautiful. I mean, it's thrilling to see him. And then after he was on stage for, I think it was 22 minutes, because the Japanese time these things. They know, have everything down to, you know, so at the end of 22 minutes, he stands up and he goes, you know, "I'll be right back. I got to pee." And he shuffles off, and that's it. Sly's done for the night, and the band finishes the show on their own.
Wow.
So in the same night, I saw one of the, you know, I was participating in one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. And then immediately after, I see one of the most, you know, beautiful and terrible things that I've ever seen, you know, all
Right.
All in one day. That was all Tuesday,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
I have good. There's another story in the book I have. Is, I did a chapter on like what's your worst nightmare? In other words, what's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you on stage? And it's after after you do this for so many years, it's kind of like it's hard to get embarrassed anymore, or like you've just seen everything go wrong that could possibly ever go wrong. So like it kind of doesn't phase you. You just figure out a work around it. Like we'll be right back, folks. The guitar amp blew up or whatever it is. I think that it was the first time that I subbed on Broadway in Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And they had me in this costume with a leather jacket and a striped shirt and aviator glasses on. They basically dressed me up to look like, Joey Ramone kind of thing. And I'm wearing this necklace right here.
Nice.
Right?
Yep.
So 45 adapter, it's on a metal, the important salient point is it's on a metal chain. All right? Keep this in mind. So at the end of the show, my instructions are, finish playing the bow music. My instructions are to put the bass down and walk up and take a bow with the cast. That's what I've got to do, right? So the second to last scene, I think, there's kind of a mosh pit scene on stage. It's all choreographed. So what I have to do at some point is I have to walk up to a mark on the stage. It's dark, the strobe lights, I can't see what anything's going on. And I'm to sit there on the mark with my back to the Yitzhak character, who's going to basically, as I'm playing, is going to slam into me, twice. I'm to be, hit physically on stage, kind of thing. And that was played by an actress named Lena Hall, who probably weighs, 100 pounds soaking wet. So she runs into me full steam, and I'm just kind of like, all right, well, that was it. All right, cool. But in the melee, this chain right here has gotten wrapped around like a badge, a button that's on the leather jacket. So the strap of the bass is underneath the chain. I'm basically physically locked to my body. Like I can't get up. So at the end of the stage, I go to pick up the bass and I can't get up. And 1,000 people are watching me like, what are you doing? And so I pulled the strap off the strap button on the bass, right? And I'm trying to get that off, and pulling it, it's tying up the hair, the chain, and the strap are like. The more I'm pulling, it becomes like a knot. There's no possible way, and I'm hardwired onto the rig. It's not a wireless rig. So I can't get off stage. I'm stuck on a with 1,000 people, and the cast is now looking at me like, "What are you doing, man?" So the music director finally, it took so long. I'm sure it took like 10 seconds or whatever, but it felt like about an hour and a half. So the music director finally says, "Just bring the bass over." I'm like, "That's a good idea." So walk over, like tangled up. The bass is like tangled to me, and the music director, he took mercy upon my soul. He just reached across and grabbed the guitar jack and unplugged it. Like it never occurred to me to do that. That wasn't in my instructions. So at least I could get off stage with my tail between my legs, and like get into the wings and try. Like the whole audience was watching this, and the cast too. So my girlfriend Julie was coming to pick me up after the show. So she was waiting out on 54th Street or wherever it was, 45th Street. So by the time I got to the stage door, she had already seen a friend of hers who had seen the show and had already heard like the incident had already made its way out to the street before I even got there. Like, what happened? Like, you weren't at the show. What do you mean? What happened? How do you know?
Oh my God, that's awesome. One of my most embarrassing moments. I'm very fortunate in that I'm the only one who saw it. It was huge. It was a huge show at South by Southwest for Cowboy Mouth. There must have been like 1,500 people in this old theater, and it was probably our second time playing there. So it was early on, like '93. And the show ends, and just like Springsteen, I leap into the air on the final note, and I come down on my knees as the lights go out. and thank fucking Christ the lights went out because my knees hurt so bad. I actually bent over in pain and had tears coming out of both eyes. And all I could do was turn and crawl off the stage. Just crawled off the stage. That was in 1993, and to this day, I can't kneel on my left knee without stabbing pain coming back to me. That was an embarrassing moment in Austin. The second most embarrassing moment in Austin was we had just played the 1,500 people at Liberty Lunch. I don't know if you ever played there in your career, but it was a big warehouse with a concrete floor, just a barn, really. And the place was trash. There were beer bottles everywhere, Shiner box and paper and shit. And I had a big crush on Linda Williams at the time. It was 1994. And I was Passionate Kisses was my favorite record. And I had let a friend of hers know that I really wanted to meet her, Margaret Moser, a great journalist who's no longer with us. And so suddenly I'm in the empty Liberty Lunch, and here comes Lucinda Williams walking towards me. And I'm like, wow, Lucinda Williams, man, this is awesome. Austin, Lucinda Williams, I get to meet her, this is great. And then I notice as she gets closer that she's kind of 3 sheets to the wind. And she's pushing trash out of the way with her feet. And she gets closer, and her eyes are slitted. She's so drunk, and she walks right up to me, and she goes, "Where's Fred?" And I just went that way. And I lost my crush immediately.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes, am I right?
Well, I mean, you did. And I don't know, like, how many times did that not work out? I mean, for the most part, I'm sure it was great fun to play with, people that you'd grown up listening to.
Well, let me put it to you this way, sort of like my very first high school talent show ever, the first time I was on stage with a bass in front of people, and this is in front of, I also talk about this in the book, this is in front of a gymnasium of people at an all-boys high school who actively hated me. Like, we're physically trying to cut my hair off. The football team was going to hold me down and physically cut my hair off. It was bad. It was not good. So, when we're playing a band at this talent show, it's something like you have 600 kids screaming in approval. And you're like, wait a minute, this is an immediate reversal of fortune. I got to figure out how this happened and possibly, repeat this success, which led me to a career, which has led me to here. But, at that first talent show, we're playing cover tunes as one does when one is, 17 years old and hasn't written a song yet, possibly. And I'm sure present company accepted, of course. So one of the first things we did was we played Roxanne Message in a Bottle. So a mere 27 years later or something, I'm at the first inaugural Obama with Sam Moore, special guest Elvis Costello and Sting. And we know that Mr. Sting, this is the second time we played, we've worked with him three or four times, I guess. We knew he was going to do Every Breath You Take. That was on the menu. And then he was going to do the solo acoustic version, like from the Secret Policeman's Other Ball. Have you ever heard that record? Message. It's him and a guitar. Nice. He does the message. And then he also wanted to do the song Brand New Day because, but he had a track to go along with that because he was going to play it at another gig across town. He's going to have his buddy Stevie Wonder sit in on harmonica, who played on the original track. So he was basically rehearsing it with us, and we're like, okay, we'll sit in for Stevie Wonder, not a problem. And he had, but we started playing along with him with the track, And so he said, "You guys want to play on this?" Like, yeah. So I had to make his assistant email me the MP3 to my phone, and I had to sit backstage with a pencil and write out the chart while everybody else was enjoying a dinner break. So I had to do that. But that was going well. The Every Breath rehearsal went well, and then we knew he was going to do Message. So I said to him, I said, "Do you want us to accompany you on Message?" He said, "Do you know it?" I said, C sharp, right? He's like, "Yeah." So, 27 years later, I'm playing Message on stage with the guy who wrote it and sang it. And it's kind of like one of those pinch yourself moments. And the background singer, my friend Chrissy Poland, took a picture of us at rehearsal. Like, he's teaching us Brand New Day on stage, and I'm standing face to face with the man, and I got the bass up so I can hear like the tone of the key, I'm listening to the neck, like I'm trying to learn Brand New Day on stage, sort of. It was like it's one of those life full circle kind of moments, like you can't imagine where you're starting out that you would ever end up there,
Right.
Right. Wow.
And even though I've seen, I've only worked with a guy 3 or 4 times, it's still like, I worked with the guy. I did, it happened. I was there. So that's why it's all on the resume. That's why all the Hall of Famers are on the resume. I played with them. I was there. I did it once.
And the beautiful thing of that is that you were able to get through that, and it worked out great. Because I was just, as you were telling that story, I was reminded of Adele on the Grammys a few years back when the monitor problems, we could all hear it, but she was hearing it too.
Yeah.
The mic fell into the piano. And it's just a piano, so he's trying to play, but it's bouncing around. And then she's live, and what do you do in that moment when? And then the piano's not even making chords because the thing is laying on it funny, so the chords don't sound like. You know what I mean? I don't know if you ever saw that. I was watching it live.
I watched that live.
Me too.
What the hell is going on?
Right. It was one of the microphones fell into the piano, and it caused all kinds of problems. But go ahead.
That's why they don't like to do live television. When you see the Super Bowl and stuff like that, with rare exceptions, most of those things are canned. They're all pre-recorded except for the lead vocal.
Right.
The only exception I know for sure was Springsteen insisted that the entire band be live on the Super Bowl. But that's exactly why. Like, you have to remove most of those things that can go wrong. If you're doing it on a live telecast in front of 1 billion people, it's a drag. It's a real drag.
And not only that, the thing that was the biggest drag is that she seemed to get dragged through the mud for it. Something that was completely out of her hands.
It wasn't her fault. Right. It wasn't her fault at all.
And everybody's like, oh, she's losing it. It's crazy.
The first time I saw somebody sing to tape music was I was living in New York in 1980, probably 6 or 7, and the Neville Brothers came to play the Lone Star. Fallo on the Bayou had just come out, and one of the songs was Aaron Neville singing Mona Lisa backed by just strings. So the brothers are tearing the place up. It's just a great night, and the Lone Star was a fun club, and especially when it was packed. I was sitting on a stairway above the band watching Willie Green just shred, and I remember at one point they were in the middle of this jam and he drops a stick. Willie doesn't even miss a beat. He's keeping the same beat with one hand while he's picking up the stick and getting back. Just incredible. So they get to Mona Lisa, and I'm thinking like, oh, I wonder if the brothers are going to play it. But no, they hit the tape button and the strings play. So Aaron's singing Mona Lisa, and it's so beautiful. Like, the place is hushed and the strings are soaring and his voice is so high. But he's got a deep speaking voice. So there's a string solo. And the string solo takes off, and you can see the audience is just all melting. They're like in heaven. And Aaron's still got the mic, and he looks out the crowd and he goes, kind of reminds you of Bambi, don't it? And then he went back to singing beautifully.
Right, like the voice of an angel, but still got to keep it real, though.
Absolutely.
And he loved Bambi,
So besides this, what else have you done? I know you were a producer as well, right? You produced some music. I've heard some of the stuff you've produced. It's like reminds me of Flim and the BBs and stuff like that. It's very cool and vibey.
Oh, right. Well, there have been 2 sort of phases of the recording stuff, and the pandemic has sort of like afforded us a new opportunity to record, but now remotely, so like what I've been doing for the last year and 14 months, whatever it is sending files back and forth between my guys who ordinarily I would play together in the studio with, but we've been doing the file sharing thing, and I've gotten 25, 26 tracks done just in the last year, to the point where an old friend of mine from my Epic Records days now works for a record company called Color Red Music out of Denver, which is started by Eddie Roberts from the New Master Sounds, if you know those guys. So they signed. They're like, I have my first single just came out on Color Red Music last month, and it features Crispin Co. from the Uptown Horns, who played the tenor solo on Living in America by James Brown. Moses Moe from Mother's Finest, guitar player on it. Kenny Soul from the band Dag and the band Nantucket.
I loved Dag. They were so awesome. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
I work with Kenny all the time. I was with him over the weekend. He's about a mile and a half away from me here in Queens. He's got a basement set up where he can record his drums down there. So we're constantly sending files back and
What
forth.
a drummer! You know, oh my God, he's such a feel, man. Keep going.
Monster. Well, Kenny, I had him. He was Sam's drummer. I got him on the Sam gig like the last 2 years of that. So the last trip to Japan, we took Kenny out with us, and yeah, I told Kenny when he first did the Sam gig, I said, like, I don't care whatever else you play, just make sure your right foot, your kick drum, is just full on all the time, because that's what Sam's going to go like, yeah, this guy's good. He's got to. All he cares about is his foot. That's all he hears. All he cares about. So he came into the first gig and he just like stomping on the kick drum all night. And at the end of the night, Sam was like, "This guy, he's good." I'm like, "Yeah, he is."
Awesome. You know, Shamar Allen played with Willie Nelson on a record, and he asked him to go on tour. And he said on the second night of tour, first week of tour, his drummer of like 40 years, Paul English, somebody died in his family, I think his mom or something, and he had to leave the tour and go home. So Sleep at the Wheel was opening, and the manager said our drummer would be honored to sit in for Paul till he gets back, and Willie was like, fine. So he said the very first song the next night they're playing On the Road Again. And he said, Uncle Paul, 30 seconds into the song, Willie looks over his shoulder at the drummer and he goes, boom chuck, motherfucker, boom chuck.
Nice. So even Willie, I remember we were talking about earlier that Alex Summers from the Police had kind of put out his sort of story about Sting being a giant pain.
Andy Summers.
Andy Summers, sorry. And I just saw another story. Shmi was saying that, you know, she saw Sting at Jazz Fest. He watched Wayne Toops while leaning on a piano. She said he watched backstage the whole time. He came off the thing and he even told him, hey, man, I really dug your set. As the guy, you know, as Toops was walking up the stage. And I've heard all of these great stories about Sting just being totally cool. And then Andy Summers is up there talking like he's the biggest and showing these clips. There was one in particular where they were playing Murder by Numbers, and he kept, you know, Sting finally lost it with him. He was like, dude, you keep missing the A chord. You know, I think they go from a 1 to a 4 kind of thing. He's like, why do you keep missing this chord or whatever? And, you know, see? What an asshole. You know, it was that kind of thing.
But it's funny, but if you've been in a band with somebody for as long as they've been in a band, you can't help but think they're an asshole.
Well, that's the thing.
You've seen them be an asshole many times. Now, you've seen them be a great person many times, too. But,
can you imagine getting world famous with the guys you went to high school with?
Right.
I thank my lucky stars I did not get world famous with Cowboy Mouth.
You're famous to us, bro. Well, that's the thing. Like, you know, like I've been working with Little Anthony and the Imperials, right? So they started in 1957 with Tears on My Pillow and Shimmy Shimmy Cocoa Bop and Hurt So Bad, right? They were in high school. So they're still mad 60 years later about it. You remember that time? I'm like, you know, dude, like, let it go. Take separate the gig, just show up and do your job. Like cats and dogs.
That's how Fred and I were. Though, like, Fred and I knew each other when he was 17 and graduated high school. I was 21. Right. That's when we first started playing music together. So we'd known each other all our lives, and we fought like brothers. And I just remember one time in the studio, we were fighting over who knows what. We were always fighting, and it was always ugly. And I turned to Griff and I go, dude, what do you think? And he goes, you know, Griff, he goes, dude, I don't know. It's just another record. I'm going to make plenty of them in my career.
Right. And you guys are losing it. And, you know, there's also that thing, you know, when you're between 17 and 25, you're sort of figuring out who you are. You know, you think you know who you are when you're 17, but you don't. You haven't had enough experience, and things are going to change. And you sort of define I think sociologists even say it too, right? Males take up to 25 before they start to mature and really even understand consequences.
Really? I thought it was 50.
Right. You're probably right. They're probably overestimating here, but
yeah.
So do you know I was almost the first bass player in Cowboy Mouth?
No, I did not know that.
That's right.
No, who actually was?
He wisely chose to go to Berklee School of Music instead, and has had the wonderful varied career that we've been spending the last hour talking about. If he had joined Cowboy Mouth, he would have been one out of 14 bass players.
Right. It's like Spinal Tap with the bass players.
First one.
You would have been the first one. That's right.
No, what happened was it wasn't even like having any sagacious foresight into what life was going to hold for me. What happened was I started at Berklee College of Music, and you got to pay all that money and get into the dorms. And I was about a month or two into my first semester, and Fred called and said, "Hey, I'm doing this band, nobody's ever heard of. We're going to call them Cowboy Mouth, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And like, you want to come do it?" I was like, "Dude, I just paid all this money to go to school, out of pocket. Like I can't do it right now." And he was like, oh, he was so depressed. He was like, "Oh man, all right, And then that was the last I heard of it. And then he showed up on MCA Records like the next week. And I was like, well, man, I don't know.
It wasn't quite the next week. It took us a few years, but it was a fun ride. But your ride was as much fun, if not more. We never had a moment like you had in Japan, for sure. We had one of our greatest, I guess, stage moment was Midtown Music Festival. We were opening for, you mentioned Robin Zander. We were opening for those guys. And there was 50,000 people in front of us. Literally, as far as we could see people disappearing down a hill. And so
Right.
that was, and we had a great show, and like any great show, that moment of transcendence, that moment where you feel the giant connection with all the energy, it's pretty special. The two have had that, but I think you made the right choice going to Berklee.
Maybe. Well, before Berklee, though, I told you, you mentioned it before, I started at Epic Records. I was a publicist for Epic Records. And the reason you reminded me of this now is because I have a Cheap Trick story. Because the first day I got out to, I started as a per diem employee, like making copies and getting coffee kind of thing for about a year and a half in the New York office. And then I got hired on as the manager of West Coast publicity for Epic, Portrait, and CBS Associated Labels in Los Angeles. And I got a corporate Amex card. I was like a junior executive. I was on my way and the whole thing. So the first day in the LA office, my first day at work, my new job, I've got an office, I've got a window, I've got a desk, like this is big time, right? I think I had a mohawk at the time, and my fashion sense was to wear sweats to the office to show that I was, nonconformist. I was cut quite a path in those days. First day in the office, my boss says, "All right, I want you to go with the president of the labels in town, the guy named Ray Anderson at the time, and the head of West Coast Publicity. I want you to go with them to the studio because Cheap Trick is there and they want to play us their new single." And I'm like, "All right, the new album. I want to play the new album." So the first thing in the office, first day, I get into a stretch limousine with like the biggest higher ups at the label. We drive over, I think it was Cherokee Studios or something. We're sitting, there's a huge spread of food out there from Stage Deli that was just, I don't know, set up for us. I don't know. It's the record company days, all that stuff all went on the band's account. So I don't know
Of course. Yes.
Well, actually, I do know for it. I don't know who authorized it. So they set us behind, the giant, beautiful Neve console. So it's the engineer, the president of the label, the head of promotion, and me. Like the new kid is like, hi fellas. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. And on the other side of the console, so however deep a recording console is, 3.5 feet, right? Between the speakers, I see 4 faces. Bunny, Rick, Xander, Tom, looking at us like this.
Wow.
They hit play. Like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And they played The Flame. That was the song that they played.
No kidding. What a great song.
It is a great song. But however, in 1987 or whatever it was, the last thing they had done was like Dream Police, like if you think about the 70s stuff, the production value of it versus the sound of The Flame. The Flame is a very slick.
It's an 80s sounding slick, right, pop song.
Very, right. It's like Heart, how can I leave you alone? That kind of shit.
Right.
So in my mind, because I just come from WTUL, uptown New Orleans,
of course,
punk rock, right? What I heard was, I said, this sounds overproduced. It sounds syrupy. It sounds just commercial. I hated it.
Right.
Immediately hated. Now, it's a good thing I'm not an A&R guy because I was their only #1 single. I was absolutely
Wow.
wrong in terms of business. I was wrong, but in terms
Because
of my
that's a song
taste, I
for
was like,
girls. That's the thing. I mean, that song, that was one of those songs that they would do the where you dedicate, you call into the radio stations. Are you kidding me? The
yeah,
Flame was like the biggest dedication song, until
it
another
is.
Journey song comes out, and then the Journey song again, and then that was them competing with
Yeah,
Journey.
exactly right, exactly right. And Xander was looking at me like this, like, "What do you think? What do you think?" I'm like, "Sounds great." Like
Of course you were. What are you going to tell Robin Zander?
there's nothing. Hey, like you can't be. I'm in front of the big bosses of the label too. I'm like,
Right.
"This sounds great. My favorite thing I've ever heard." Uh,
But
I have a Robin Zander story. We played with them many times, and I love the band. And this one particular time, we were playing in Naperville, which is outside of Chicago, and so
sure,
they're especially big in the Chicago area, and
huge.
huge. And our merchandise guy at the time, Will Byington, was from Naperville, so it's a hometown gig, and he's opening for Cheap Trick, and he's so excited when we pull into the place. It's an outdoor show, and the tour bus is already there. So one of the things Will had to do every day was shave Fred's drumsticks to get the wax off of them because
Yeah, yeah.
he didn't like buying them shaved. He liked Will to shave them for him. So Will's outside the bus and he's shaving the drumsticks, and it's like 8 o'clock in the morning, and the door bus opens for the Cheap Trick bus, and he looks up all excited, and this guy gets off and he's stretching, and he comes over and he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "Hi, you with Cheap Trick?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well,
Robin Zander.
he goes, I'm a big fan, man. I'm from Naperville, and I've been waiting all month because when this was on the schedule, I just couldn't wait. I love Cheap Trick. I've been loving him since I'm a kid. What do you do for the band?" He looks down and he goes, "I'm the lead singer." And he got back on the bus.
that's funny because Rick Nielsen is a little bit more of the guy who you see with associated with Cheap Trick more than Robin Zander even.
Right, but Xander, when Xander's off stage, the hair's back in a ponytail, and if he's got a ball cap on, like you have to really like look at him twice. Like, is that Xander? Yeah, it's him.
Oh, don't make Will feel better. I've held this over his head for 20 years. Don't try and make him feel better now. It's no good.
I'm just saying it could have happened to any of us. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, now you want to go there? Same opening for Cheap Trick at the Riviera in Chicago, the Windy City. Will, who's all business, never brings a girl around, has a date. We're all like, "Wow, Will's got a girl on the tour bus. This is really weird." And he's being all sociable up front, and we're kind of watching from the back. "Wow, look at Will." And then Will disappears, and he's gone for kind of a while. And then Griff comes on, and he's chatting up Will's girl, and we're like, "Well, this isn't good." And after a few minutes, Griff gets up to leave, and Will still hasn't come back. And I go, "I got to go check on Will. He's left his girl in here for like 20 minutes. I walk off the bus, and I see Griff bent down and yelling at the luggage compartment, "Who are you?" And Will was yelling, "Somebody let me out." And Griff, instead of just opening the thing, goes, "But who are you?" Like he's not going to open it unless he knows who it is. I'm like, "Will, why didn't you just reach for your phone?" He goes, "I didn't think of that, man."
Nice.
Oh God.
So where
what's
can we
really
find
coming
you?
up?
Go ahead. Where can we
It's
find you
pretty-
on YouTube and
Yes,
stuff?
is Broadway getting back to work anytime soon?
First question, the easy question: funkboy.net, funkboy.net has links to everything, the book, the YouTube, everything. Broadway. There are some productions that have announced that they're aiming for, and I don't know if that means they'll necessarily make it, but like September.
Everybody
It's going to
is.
be over a year and a half. Not everybody. No, that's the first ones that are starting out.
No, what I mean is
The
like
musical.
in my business too, like shows,
Oh,
everybody's just starting to, September seems to be what everybody's target date is.
Trying to get back in, yeah. Do you
Right.
have any
Well, but
friends do you have any musician friends that had to leave town because they just didn't have the money to stay?
I don't know if "had to" is the right word, but a lot of them did because there's no reason to be here. You realize whatever you're working on, you can do remotely. So, like, I had a friend moved to Nashville. I had some people move to Austin. People go back to the parents' house, for first time in a long time. And I don't know if they considered it temporary or what the deal was. Everybody's kind of in a different sort of situation. I mean, we're in a good situation because our overhead is kind of low, and we had a couple of nuts saved up for the winter, and I managed to get a couple of pennies from New York State unemployment. Actually, interestingly enough, the reason I was able to get pennies from the state of New York, because the freelance thing wasn't originally allowed to get unemployment, I don't think. It became, they passed a bill to get that done fairly soon, but then if you can imagine everybody in the state of New York all calling unemployment at the same time, you cannot get through. It's impossible. So the only reason I managed to get $125 a week from New York State unemployment is because I had a W-2 job subbing for the Temptations musical on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd only done, I don't know, I think I only did about 6 or 8 shows before the shutdown total, but because there was a W-2, it was on the books. So they said, oh yeah, you're employed, right, so you must be unemployed. The only thing I'm unemployed from, according to the state of New York, is the Temptations musical on Broadway,
right?
Which I total of 8 times. That was it. So it's been kind of a weird scene. But as I was talking about before, the weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, the private party business, that's coming back. I did one this weekend, and then I have nothing until June 5th. And then starting June 5th, every Saturday for the rest of the year almost is already booked.
Nice.
Wow. That's great, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll happen. I mean, I've had a few things cancel. It just, I think
I've had a year of things canceling.
Right.
The whole year. I was booked through the whole year, and then one by one they're going, that one's moving, that one's postponing, that one's canceled. And that happened up until May of this year, especially with the private party stuff. We had 2 or 3 of them in May, and one by one they're like, okay, no, that one's got to go. But this is months ago now. That one's got to go, this one's got to go. But the June ones are all sticking. They're all sticking. And all the weddings that got postponed last year are now doubling up for this year. So,
nice.
We're going to be able to pay the rent for the second half of the year, from actual work, which will be nice.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, I'm starting to hear more and more that, even though they're being real cautious, about wearing masks and stuff, I'm starting to hear more and more from medical people that once you get the vaccine, you're pretty much fine. You don't really have to, if you catch it, it's not going to be that bad. You're not going to go to the hospital. It's just going to be like the flu, and you got a lesser chance of catching it. Go ahead.
Yesterday was 2 weeks past my second dose, so I should be fully vaccinated.
Me too. Same time frame. But go ahead.
Right on. But that all said, I got COVID last March, a year ago March.
Oh, wow.
I was the first guy on my block to have it too, because you remember the first hot spot in the U.S. was pretty much in Westchester County up here in New York, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the last shows I did before the shutdown was a multi-act oldies bill with people in their 80s in Westchester County in New York. That was one of the last shows I did.
Wow.
With Joey D, Starlighters and the Drifters and the Tokens, all these guys that are literally 80, in their 80s, So I did 2 of those shows. I subbed on Rock of Ages off Broadway. I subbed on the Temptations on Broadway. I did a wedding in New Jersey. And then, here's the one. I did what can only be described as a super spreader event. I played the Red Lion on Bleecker Street, which you must have been there in your travels. It's all asses to elbows, people breathing on you, screaming and spitting on you all night, 1 to 4 in the morning, and that was the one, because the next day, or next week I should say, 3 days later, couldn't smell anything, couldn't taste anything, but at that time we didn't know that was a thing. That wasn't a symptom that was widely known about, because this thing was in America way before they told us. It was in New York way before they told us.
Right, same in New Orleans.
Right, and months later, when we found out that was a symptom, we said, why don't we try the antibody test to see? And me and my girl, we both got positive antibodies. Yep, you had it, for sure.
Right.
So we got it. First people on our block to have it. It was great.
And they weren't sure how long the antibodies would really work, right? They still saying that they're kind of waiting to see. you know.
They don't know. They don't know how long the vaccine is going to work because they only have 6 months worth of data.
Right. I mean, it's understandable.
Well,
They can't make guarantees. Science is an exacting thing. You can't guess on something, just because it looks good.
Moving target.
Right.
I have to say, of all the people I've spoken to, I don't know that anyone I know has been more creative with their time during the pandemic. You've done 25 songs, you've written a book, and had a blog. So hats off to you, man, because my will to be creative disappeared with the pandemic, and I just played a lot of chess, and I taught myself to play piano, which was fun. But
Right on.
I'm totally impressed. Yeah.
I started working on playing the upright bass with bow, which is not something
Nice.
I was ever trained to do. A rock and roll kid playing Fender bass, So now I'm like, because then occasionally in a Broadway pit, there'll be like, 3 songs on upright and 2 of them are going to be with a bow. And not having ever played with that before, like it's sort of like, you learn how to play guitar, you find with a pick and everything's cool, and then somebody
Right,
hands you a
right.
fly swatter. Here's a fly swatter,
Right.
now play it. Like, well, what do I don't even know how
Yeah.
to make the strings speak, So I spent the pandemic like trying to learn how to play arco bass, and to a very questionable level of success.
But isn't it expressive when you start to use a bow? It becomes expressive in a different way, right? You got all the swells and legato stuff you can do, and it just.
It doesn't get expressive for a long time, my friend. The first one is like,
It's just a bunch of noise for a while, huh?
it's awful. It's the most humbling thing. I've talked to like all my friends who went to classical music school, and it's like, yeah, the bow, that's humbling right there.
I've never tried,
Like-
obviously.
I've
It's like
been
giving
playing piano now. Go ahead.
No, it's like giving a 7-year-old kid a trumpet. Here, learn this. Like, it's not so well.
You were saying, Paul?
I was just saying, I was telling Mikey just last week, I've been playing piano now for months, and I sit with my iReal book and I learn all these jazz standards with the proper fingerings, and I'm so impressed with myself, So I went to go visit a friend who was rehearsing some jazz, and her piano player is a young man named Oscar Rossignoli, who's just one of the most amazing young piano players I've ever heard. And he's a friend. And so as they're rehearsing, they take a break, and I go, hey, Oscar, let me show you that song of mine that y'all cover. I learned it on piano. So I play it, and the rehearsal ends, and he leaves, and I turn to Carmela, and I said, Oscar was singularly unimpressed with my piano playing. And she's like, well, I'm not sure he knows that you never played piano before the flood, so maybe it was that. And I was like, no, he was singularly unimpressed. And then I told Mikey that night I had like the Bull Durham dream where he's pitching naked on the mound, only I was playing piano naked, and Oscar Rossignoli and David Torkanowski and Josh Paxton are all pointing at me and laughing. And I said, then I woke up and I was actually playing, and they were all laughing at me. So I'm pretty sure it's what's going to happen when I play in public, because being a rock and roller, we don't really care that we're not good on our instruments. As Mary LeSang said, fuck learn the song, I want to play the song. That's rock and roll. So I don't care that I'm not good on piano. I can play piano, and at some point when I can sing again, I'm going to play piano. And I realize that the piano players in New Orleans will laugh at me both behind my back and to my face. That's okay.
Yes, they will. You'll deserve it, and that's fine. That's the
That's
whole
right.
punk ethic too. The reason why the Ramones were so revered is because everybody saw them and said, "Well, I think I can do that. I think I can play like
That's rock and roll, man.
They're not wrong. You sit down and 3 chords in the truth, get a bar chord together, and you can have a band tomorrow.
But there's something that's magical about guys who don't. Yeah, and this as a learned musician, there's a spasticity that is singularly for people who are just picking up an instrument that's hard to mock once you play it for a while. It's just hard to, and a lot of that energy. Being a guy who records a lot of bands, I love the guy who can't play, because he's going to add an attitude to the thing that that wasn't there. You don't want it that tight.
I have a New Orleans story that involves my early days learning how to play. I got a gig with Mighty Sam McClain at Benny's Uptown Bar.
Nice.
don't think they had dirt. I think it was dirt floors still at the time. I don't think certainly was no linoleum in there. Wayne Bennett on guitar, right? And basically at that time, all I knew how to play was kind of a 12-bar blues. That was about it. I had a decent feel, but I didn't know anything. Like I didn't have any repertoire. So, Wayne Bennett is a veteran at this point. Knows a billion songs, knows every R&B standard ever written. So he's like, what do you want to do? Let's Stay Together by Al Green. I'm like, no. So I'm kind of following through it. I'm dying a miserable death in front of a good solid 15 people, right? There was a cat there that Wayne knew, bass player, and I cannot remember his name. It was a long time ago. Please pardon me, but they wanted him to sit in because he knew any songs, as opposed to me who knew no songs. And I said, Fern, I just wanted to do a couple songs. He ended up playing the entire second set by himself. Listen, I still got my $15 pay at the end of the night. So
there you go.
No, but check this out. What he did was, I knew I didn't know musically, the names of things, but I had a decent sort of sense of pitch, so I could tell when notes weren't right. But what this guy was doing, he was playing like if he had a downbeat, he would play the correct note, wrong note, wrong note, wrong note, correct note, wrong note, wrong note, wrong note. So like he was playing garbage, but the downbeat of every bar was correct.
Wow.
So therefore, they thought this guy's a genius. He knows all these songs, and I'm thinking like,
wow.
But it teaches you something like, okay, all I got to really get root on the downbeat. If I got that correct, I can get away with murder for the rest of the gig.
Funny. That's funny. I had one gig as a bass player about 5-6 years ago. Little Freddie King, the blues man in New Orleans, his bass player had a heart attack. So his manager, who's also his drummer, Wacko Wade, he calls me and he says, Freddie likes you, Paul. Would you sit in on bass until we work this out? And I go, yeah, I love Freddie. I'd be honored. So he says he wants you to come by and audition tomorrow. Is that cool? I'm like, yeah, I haven't played bass in a while. It's fair enough. So I go to Freddie's place and I find out that Freddie was a bass player when he started out. So he starts literally every single song that he plays, he starts with the bass riff on guitar, and then he goes into the song. So I cop to that early. I hear the bass riff. I just start playing the bass riff. And being raised in blues and rock and roll, I don't deviate from the fucking riff. I'm playing that riff until the song's over because that's how rock and roll works. So we play the first song, and Freddie goes, yeah. And he goes into the second song, and he starts with the riff again. So I pick up the riff, and we start playing it. And about halfway through the song, he stops the song. He looks at his manager, and he goes, you see this man? This man's a bass player. That all over the next stuff we had the other day, that ain't for the bass player. That's for little Freddie King to play. That's for little Freddie King.
Right.
I got the gig because I stuck to the fucking riff, man.
Those are called the money notes. You know what the money notes are?
The ones that get you paid.
That's right. There's a Willie Nelson story that I cite in my book, as you mentioned Willie before. Back in the very early 60s, Ray Price, who was a country superstar at the time, had a bass player who was leaving the band. And the bass player's name was Donnie Lytle, who went on to change his name to Johnny Paycheck. He was leaving the band, and Ray Price needed a bass player. Willie was around, and he said, Willie, can you come do this tour on bass? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'm not doing anything. It's fine. He said, Willie, can you play bass? And Willie said, can everybody?
That's awesome.
And as a bass player, how do you feel about that?
It's exactly the right sentiment. Like, you have to be humble about this thing. It's not that hard what we do. You can get functional real quick, especially if you catch the riff from the guitar player. It's like, all right, I'm going to play that. Just stay there. So it's not rocket science.
No, but it's about a good feel for most things, right? I mean, everything's still got a.
Wow, Mikey, we have gone so far over today. We've gone a half hour over time.
You knew it was going to happen. I mean, Ivan's just a wealth of stories and information, and
so many stories.
I'm looking at some of the comments here. The people love, everybody's loving it. Enjoying the back, the inside baseball. of it all. So if you guys want to see more of this stuff, go check out. He's got stories and stories on YouTube.
Yeah, check out his YouTube blog and catch more of his stories. And great catching up with you. And
it's Funk Boy, right? Funkboy.com?
Funkboy.net.
.net. Funkboy.net. Excellent. And we're gonna, on our way out today, we're gonna actually play a track that you produced. We picked up Playing Hooky. Is that one of the ones that we should play? Because that's the only one I got. So hopefully that's the perfect one to play.
It seemed appropriate for this last year.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good point, Paul. After a year of COVID. But good things are on the horizon, right, fellas? We're getting ready to, like you said, June.
Absolutely.
I'm booked.
Absolutely. Good thing.
He's booked. That's a beautiful thing. All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us today. Y'all stayed with us for a good long time. And we'll see you guys on Friday with Keith Spera.
Keith Spera will be our first guest for a brief chat because he's got to bring his kids to school. And then, of course, we'll have the superhero review with Chicago Lou and the cosplay pictures that he will bring to that as well.
Lou's probably sitting there going, cosplay pictures.
I thought that was a normal
I don't know if we're
thing
going to do it weekly. We're going to probably do it, maybe he's got to collect some more people.
You and Luis now have plans without me. I'll have
yes. We have private phone calls.
So whatever you and Luis decide is fine.
It's fine for Friday. So me and Luis got special Friday. But Ivan, man.
You and Ivan want some private time too. We just start having a private Mikey thing. While I go get coffee.
You got my number.
That's right. Well, we've enjoyed hanging out with you this morning, man.
Let's do it again. It was fun. I'm sure you have plenty more stories to share.
My pleasure, man. I love you guys. It's so great to see your faces and catch up. It's been on too long. And let's get back to doing what we do, each other in person.
Yes.
Yeah.
We keep threatening to do that, actually.
I love you, Bao.
Love you, man. You take care. We'll see y'all soon.